Welcome to this week's edition of the FA Show. I'm Nate Barrett. Merrill Lynch Wealth Management President Andy Sieg reaffirmed the firm's intention to stay out of the veteran broker recruiting game, noting, quote, they don't think it's a good formula for clients, shareholders, or the firm overall. Adopting a philosophy that culture can't be bought, only built, Sieg added, we're going to stay focused here on building on this tremendously strong Bank of America and Merrill Lynch culture as we put the advisor force of the future in place. The decision to stay on the sidelines comes as its competitors are engaged in a very active recruiting environment right now, often at Merrill's expense. The firm continues to see a steady stream of exits of veteran producers, with a number of high-profile departures over the past year and a half, with some voicing frustration with the firm's growth push and the bank's increasing influence. 3 teams with a combined $12 million in revenue left for Rockefeller last Friday alone. We'll be watching to see how many top producers heading out the door it will take to force a change, or if Sieg's philosophy of cohesiveness pays off in the long term. Morgan Stanley no longer wants stock market analysts or shareholders to pull up only Merrill, UBS, or Wells Fargo, its traditional wirehouse rivals, when evaluating its performance. Instead, they'd prefer comparisons to direct wealth management platforms, which have business models that don't hinge on a large army of brokers, specifically Charles Schwab. I think we're going to be compared over the next 5 years much more to a certain West Coast direct player that's done a phenomenal job, CEO James Gorman told an online audience today during the Morgan Stanley U.S. Financial Payments and CRE conference. Morgan Stanley has begun prevailing in its race with direct wealth management platforms, with 10% growth in annualized net new assets versus Schwab's 9% cited for the first quarter of the year. Since the pandemic began in 2020, roughly half of Morgan Stanley's advisor teams have grown their client assets by more than $100 million, and more than 50 teams have added more than $1 billion. All signs that the shift in focus and messaging might be on point.
You're a free agent. Are you acting like one? I'm Jeff Crosby, CEO of 3X Equity, with a reminder that you control the conversation when it comes to your career. If you're curious about switching firms, we help you secure multiple offers and find your best fit, all while you remain under the radar and 100% anonymous. Get started today at 3xequity.com/free agent.
Tony Sirianni, publisher of AdvisorHub.com and AdvisorHub Magazine. This week, we highlight that we do something different. We're usually talking to CEOs and heads of wealth management, things like that. This week, we're highlighting an author, a fellow named Jim Campbell, who's the author of Madoff Talks, Uncovering the Untold Story Behind the Most Notorious Ponzi Scheme in History. It's fascinating. We discuss how Bernie Madoff was arrested for fraud during the depths of the financial crisis, how he actually had a legitimate business as a market maker and did a lot of positive things for the industry and for investors, small investors, and then went on to steal from them, and how convoluted it got with his family and all the twisted loyalties, and just maybe what is his real motivation. It was fascinating. Here's a short clip.
I tell you what I took away from it, just in reading it, that this is a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. There's so many things, and the especially what you get into a lot of is the impact on the family itself, which just feels terrible when you read it, because the whole thing is about betrayal. But what could be more of a betrayal than a father to his family, or husband to his wife? And another thing I took away was sort of these little lies, the fact that here was a guy who was able to sort of separate his personality into sort of different silos, and completely self-justify. Everybody rationalizes. You do it, and I do it, we all do it. But this guy did it on a massive scale, and just, I have no idea what the psychological term might be, but it was just, the whole thing was sad and tragic, and what's going on with the people that he took money from, as well as his family. And he's so pathetic.
I would say that term, by the way, was compartmentalization.
Compartmentalization, yes.
When you can run one of the most ethical businesses on Wall Street side by side with the biggest criminal enterprise. And you're right describing the book. I would say the one other thing is what's very little understood is that he didn't really act alone. He was enabled by several different factors. to be able to get away with this for 40 years.
Well, it's interesting. So, our audience is pretty sophisticated in financial stuff, but it's amazing how there's just a Wall Street thing. Like when you finally get to meet this guy who's this big hedge fund guy, he's having a beer and he's burping, and it's like, this is a regular guy. What is going on? What's going on here? And a lot of times when you get to the pinnacle of these very sophisticated trading strategies, people aren't doing the basic stuff. They're not asking questions. And this is not just investors. These are large investors who have hundreds of millions of dollars or running hedge funds, and they just as soon look the other way. Ignorance is bliss with these people.
That's exactly right. I couldn't find any of the victims or even the sophisticated traders on his legitimate floor that could explain what the split strike conversion strategy was. And Bernie would explain it to me, and it'd be opaque, it'd be hard to understand. I'd have him repeat it. But eventually I figured out this is really conceptually easy, and obviously couldn't do what he said it was could do. Basically, he had a strategy that mirrored the market. So therefore, it should have been 95% correlated. Well, right off the bat, anything that's that highly correlated to the market can't guarantee results.
Right.
It's going to go up, it's going to go down. He had a strategy that was that simple to understand. Nobody understood it, and it couldn't do what he said it would do.
For the complete interview, as well as our entire library of Zoom interviews with industry leaders and influencers, visit Advisor Hub TV, which can be found on the homepage of advisorhub.com. Thanks, and look forward to seeing you next time.
We turn now to the Recruiting Wire, powered by 3X Equity, the authority on advisor transitions. In a sign that the future is now, RBC Wealth Management US has named Amanda Dolan, an 11-year company lifer who is the mastermind behind the firm's pivot to virtual recruiting during the pandemic to lead its hiring efforts. Dolan replaces Kristen Kimmel, who took over the role just 2 years ago. Dolan began her career in 2010 at RBC's Madison, Wisconsin branch office before moving in 2011 to operations, where she served as a senior technology training consultant and for the past year as the firm's financial advisor onboarding experience manager. Her work on the virtual recruiting platform contributed to, quote, one of its most successful recruiting years on record, with an Advisor Hub article also noting a claim of about 25% more candidates in the recruiting pipeline than last year. A 4-person JP Morgan private bank team in Denver has resigned to join Crescent Asset Management, according to a source with knowledge of the move. The team will officially join Crescent after Garden leaves as required under the former firm's employee agreements. The group of 4 bankers, led by Kevin E. McGuire, an 18-year industry veteran who has served as managing director and head of the private bank's Colorado Technology Vertical in Boulder team, also includes Sarah Burney and Jake Schwinn and Dan Biondi. The exit this week follows at least 9 other exits of large JP Morgan private bank teams since October 2020, 8 of which went to UBS. For a complete list of moves, as well as the access to the Advisor Hub offers tool to find out what your practice is worth, visit the Deals and Comp section of advisorhub.com. Thanks for joining us for this week's edition of the FA Show on Advisor Hub TV, powered by 3X Equity. I'm Nate Barrett. Have a great day.